been talking about the effect that COVID-19 has had on us. Let me start with the statistics. And the statistics says that amongst the 25 nations which have been, the top 25 nations which have been hit by COVID, 8 of them are from Asia. Amongst these 8, 4 of them are from Middle East, 1 from East Asia, none from ASEAN. Singapore was 25th since day before yesterday. Since yesterday, they've come down, so that is a good news for us. And 3 are from South Asia. So this is one particular message that we have to talk about. That of the 25, top 3 are from South Asia: India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. 2 of the statistics I believe that we need to share. And this is why the humane angle becomes extremely important for us. First, we're all aware of the fact that the elderlies and those who have certain ailments are affected more. And of course, we're having more deaths at that particular point. But there's another information which is seldom provided, which is that globally, bottom of the pyramid are affected more. So when we talk in terms of the new, we must also understand that the segmentation of where to hit at, what sort of services are we looking at to hit at to ensure that the world is a better place for tomorrow. So at the initial sort of intro, I wanted all of us to know that what COVID has done and where it is actually hitting. Before I move on to the presentation per se, let me, can I have the next slide, please? Let me introduce my panel members. We have amongst us Mr. Rohan Samawanza. Of course, he is the president of Asia Marketing Federation. He is part of South Asia, so we always consider him to be part of this caucus. We have from Bangladesh, Mr. Ashraf bin Taj, who is the president of Marketing Society of Bangladesh. And he is also a leading distribution company managing director, which actually is distributing major brands of the world. We have, for the first time also from India, Mr. Amitabh Datta, who is the president of Calcutta Marketing Management Association. He's also a leading journalist. And on top of that, he is a lecturer in business and advertising across India. We have also for the first time from Nepal, Mr. Ravin Lama, who is the managing director of the Himalayan Times, but he also operates in Africa, in Asia. He represents the international advertising agencies in this particular part of the world, and he holds a vice president position out there. Interestingly speaking, he is also working in Mauritius and Nepal together in these 2 nations as a marketer and advertising expert. We also have our beloved Dr. Pradeep Edward from Sri Lanka. He's the CEO of Lanka Hospital Diagnostics Private Limited. So I'm sure he has been keeping extremely busy during these COVID times, and he's the Secretary General of Asia Marketing Federation. So gentlemen, thank you for being with us, and I'll get back to you as we proceed forward. And thank you very much for being part of us. Next slide, please. What we see today is one event. And let's be very, very clear. The world, as everyone has said, is not going to be the same. And this Black Swan event is something which has not only changed the world, but is going to change the mindset of individuals. Is it going to cause depression? May. Is it going to look into innovations? Of course. But what we as marketers must understand is that we should not give in to this. We must not come up and say the world is new and we are no more. We are irrelevant. We are still relevant. As marketers, we have to transform the black swan into a colorful swan. That is what our target should be. And I'm sure there's no reason why we should not be able to do it, particularly when we stick together, the entire Asia sticks together and the entire humanity sticks together. Next slide, please. One other dimension that we need to focus on, this is something also we've been discussing, that what is more important? At the one end, we're looking at saving lives, and we're talking about staying away from each other. On the other end, we're talking about opening up economies, and we know the world is opening up economies now. Because, of course, we have to ensure that businesses go forward. But can we choose one from the other? Where is this balancing going to take place? Will the balancing be exactly the same? The answer is no. We need to therefore look at not just isolation, but we should start looking at how we can also partner with other nations, with other organizations, to ensure that humanity sticks. Now, we've been talking about technology, and technology is not the end. Technology only supports to ensure that humanity survives and lives a better life. This is the ultimate task of marketers of tomorrow. And this is something all of us must focus on. Use the technology to ensure that human beings, societies, and of course, our target market per se have a better, valuable life. Next slide, please. So therefore, there should not be any argument in terms of me and we. Me will be there for personal gain, for organizational gain, for national gain. But ultimately, we must also understand that without the entire society being touched, we will not move too far. And COVID has given that lesson. It is very clearly showing that the DNA of the human being across the globe is exactly the same. They can be affected, and they will be affected by the same disease. And if we don't take care of the society as a whole, the entire world is going to be. This is one particular focus, one particular lesson that COVID has given us. And we must understand this and appreciate this very clearly. Next slide, please. Now let me talk about South Asia per se. I wanted to introduce South Asia just to give an understanding of why South Asia is what it is today. Now you can see that it goes back, the civilization goes back 3,300 BC. That is when it all started. And interestingly, if you look into it, it basically developed from three rivers, the Indus, the Ganges, and of course, the Brahmaputra. And these three rivers, interestingly, starting from Afghanistan to Pakistan to India, and came down via Nepal, Bhutan, touching China, of course, and coming down to Bangladesh or the Bay, and going down to the Bay of Bengal. Of course, Indus remained Pakistan, Indus River, and of course, part of India and Afghanistan. The other two came down, moved downwards, and then moved down to touch the sea and moved to what we call Sri Lanka, and of course, the Maldives and rest of the world. So these three rivers not only carried the water, but carried culture, carried norms along with it as people moved from up there downwards. The other interesting part, which many people do not know, is all these three rivers originated almost at the same point, and then came downwards. So this is one dimension that we need to understand. We also need to understand that, imagine that over the years, many people have come and they've stayed here. So this has been a melting pot for many civilizations. All these across the global civilizations have come up and they've used this as a melting point. That is why it is so dynamic. That is why things happen in this particular part slightly differently. Next slide, please. Certain basic statistics. As far as the area is concerned, it occupies only 3% of the world area, 4.25% of the global economy. Now look at GDP. GDP growth has been taking place at 6.3% overall on an average in South Asia. Of course, India had even 10% at a particular point in time. Now they're around 6%. Bangladesh at 8.5%. Now it's coming down. And the corona impact is going to take it down to 1.8 to 2.8%. That is the impact that they're going to have. Now, the concern is more on the right-hand side. And we see that Human Development Index, we have from 5.562 to 0.770. 0.770 is Sri Lanka, and they're doing excellent out there. But if you look down and you see that though we have only 3% of the world area, we have 21% of the world's population. That is your market, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the reason why this particular part of the world is thriving. And therefore, and you're also tackling, imagine how many cultures. So you have various segments. And you also have a huge chunk of bottom of the pyramid as well, which on an average comes down to approximately 18%, which is also pretty high. Next slide, please. Now, these are the languages that are being spoken. To look into the heterogeneity in this particular area, it's unimaginable. The heterogeneity is unbelievable. Whether it is in Afghanistan or Pakistan or India, Maldives, Nepal, just look into it. The number of dialects being spoken and the number of languages being spoken. So culturally, it is extremely rich, extremely, extremely rich. Next slide, please. Also look into the genetic map. Now, this was something which was done in a world project, which was called a One Family, One World project, where they were looking at genetic mapping. And they found that even genetically speaking, extremely rich, extremely rich. There's no gene on Earth which is not present here in this part of the world. That is how rich it is. Next one, please. Same is also true for religion. Name a religion which is not here. Of course, I know Prof. Pak Anwar will come up and say that Indonesia is actually richer in this particular area, and I agree that they have done things which others have not. So again, but saying so, this is one other perspective that we need to understand. Now, this heterogeneity makes it more interesting and makes it a better market for everyone to come up and look at. Next one, please. This is the humane angle which I wanted to highlight, that there are differences in this particular region, and there's no doubt about that. And we're talking about political differences are much more in certain part of this particular region, but they're yet living together. Let me give you an example. Even today, people, particularly in Punjab, people from India travel to Pakistan and vice versa every single day, and the border remains open. And we don't understand that this culture is so tied up that it's open. In our part of the world, though we have Bengal was divided into two parts, where we had, of course, East Bengal and West Bengal, there is still mingling of the two on a regular basis in terms of culture. If you go down south, South India and Sri Lanka are still together and they're meeting. If you move extreme north, Afghanistan and Pakistan, they're still open and they're mixing. So this mixing of cultures, though they're separate, is still taking place. The other dimension that needs to be addressed is that the meaning of social distancing. What I learned from COVID is that when I went on and I was asking people in terms of what do you mean by social distancing? For them, they said it is staying away from my family. And at times that is unacceptable. This is hurting them very much. And we need to, as marketers, we need to understand how to address. Are we merely saying go online? Or are we going and saying that we have to go online, but all at the same time ensure there's no social distancing between family, particularly in terms of family attachments. The meaning in the West and the East is different. So this is one dimension that we need to understand. So therefore, while we are utilizing the emotion and culture and religion, of course, to hit emotions, we need to understand that for our part of the region and also, of course, for South Asia, heart or even spirit share is much more important than the rationality of the mind share. This is one particular area which I know for sure that it is very close to Asia Marketing Federation, because this is something which Harman Kardon has given us and has tried to tell us that the future lies in this particular area. And I tell you that particularly COVID is telling us that don't just head at the mind share, don't just look into the financial bottom line, but much more than that. So the stories that are coming in terms of balancing the economy, the humane touch, rather than merely economic emancipation. And is that a prerequisite? Again, let me come up and state quite clearly that GDP by itself is not and cannot be an answer. There are other dimensions to it that we need to look into. And those dimensions are only going to solve the problem of our nations. And particularly in the post-COVID crisis, GDP is only going to be one very small area. Professor Kotler was quite clearly stating that what are the other areas that we need to look at. And I strongly believe that we need to look into those areas as well, the human angle of it. Next slide, please. I call it the human octave. Why the human octave? One, as we all know, the octave gives you double the sound or double the sort of essence of what a single sound gives you. That is one dimension of it. The other dimension of octave is, and particularly when you talk in terms of technology, when you measure using technology, using octave as a software, you can actually measure both a linear as well as a non-linear dimension. Today, we are looking at non-linear dimensions. We must understand and believe that we have a common fate. The civilization today, whether we are in South Asia, East Asia, Central Asia, or Europe for that matter, we have a common fate. Which means that we should look as marketers to this entire globe as a market, but segment them in a different way, not merely in terms of high income and low income, but also in terms of age. As I said, that there is a huge senior citizenry growth, which we're not looking at, particularly with that humane angle. We have a large bottom of the pyramid who are being suffering today. We have to look at them as well. We heard in the presentation that SMEs were affected, particularly the Myanmar case was very clearly stated. And we need to look into that. Ideological freedom has to be given. We have to understand that we cannot develop compartments through ideological sort of setup. That freedom is now today, it is telling us that we need to get into that particular part. Social immunity has to be provided. If the social immunity is not provided, we're talking about vaccines, and people were saying that will we be free in another 2 years, 3 years' time. I was looking at two statistics and they were alarming. One was from Bangladesh side of it. If Bangladesh tests 100,000 people every single day from today onwards, even then it'll take them 4.5 years to complete the tests. That is the timing that we are looking at. And we know that this particular virus is of a type which goes into geometric progression. So you just cannot stop it like that. First. Second, even if we have a vaccine tomorrow, we're talking about 7 billion plus individuals to be vaccinated, because otherwise travel will go on stopping. People will go on coming up with borders. Borders will go on be erecting. So we need to understand that social immunity has to be provided. And us marketers must start thinking in terms of how to ensure social immunity, at the same time, safety of every single individual on earth. Will it be done in 2 years' time? I'm not sure, but I'm challenging all of us here that let us make sure we can do it earlier, the better for us. Family bondage is the dimension which we need to also understand that will remain and will be there. And we need to focus on that. So therefore, it is growth through sharing. Without sharing, imagine what happened when we were looking at even protective equipments. One nation had it, the other didn't. And we had to supply one from the other country to the other country. So we still cannot come up and say that we are isolated, we can solve our own problem. It is not the question of local, which many people are thinking. It is going to be a global problem, a global issue that we need to associate with. Collectivism is what we should look at, though we are going into social distancing and stuff like that. But we do it collectively. If I alone want to do it, if someone else does not want to do it, I will not be able to achieve the goal. So this collective approach has to be there. All of us, the entire world, must be at the same plane in terms of understanding of what we need to do. So we have, and particularly in South Asia, we have, and of course globally, the opportunity lies in heterogeneity, because everyone has something to provide, something new to give. And until and unless there's something new is being provided, we'll not be able to go forward. And of course, at the end of the day, we do have a survival instinct, and the survival instincts will remain. Next slide, please. I was doing a sort of an assessment, and as Professor Potter was also saying that we need to look into the larger picture, I found that these three should be a major focus. Remember, the sustainable goals are strategies for us marketers of tomorrow. And particularly if you only focus on COVID, these three are of extremely importance: good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities, and of course, partnership for these, to attain these goals. These three are the major sort of strategic direction that all of us as marketers should follow. And if you follow that, I have absolutely no reason, I have every reason to believe that we will be able to achieve what we are here for. Next slide, please. Let me end by quoting something from whom we call lovingly Sadi of Shiraz, or Sadi Shirazi. And he said something very important, and which is, human beings, and this is a poem that he wrote, human beings are members of a whole in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak.